Welcome again to It Doesn't Take a Genius, conversation with introspective perspectives and pithy points of view. Here are your hosts, my friends, Max and Marty.
I think that's Mark and Mike.
Yeah, whatever.
Ramsey!
Oh, hi, Mike Marshall. How are you doing?
Fine. I had a face palm.
Well, hey, look, we've been Zooming long enough. We all know that if you can't get the focus to work right, you hold your hand in front of your camera, it focuses on it, then you take that away, and then it auto focuses back to your face, right?
Well, there is your Zoom tip of the day. Yes, thank you.
What's great is I'm still fuzzier than you are, so yes. That didn't work. Never mind.
No, extreme fuzziness is actually improves my appearance, so I'm for it. So here we are, Plato's 8 universal leadership qualities. We're down to 7 and 8. Pretty excited about that. And wow, I didn't see this one coming. I have to admit.
Let me tell you what's so great about this is, I've read this much. That's probably 3/4 of the Republic, and heck, half of this that's left is footnotes.
Right.
So I'm this far into the book, and I get to just these 2 pages, and that's where this list of 8 qualities spilled out. You can listen to the past episodes to get the full recap, but if you're going to be a leader in Plato's fictitious Republic, which is how he's studying what it means to be just, to be moral, you're going to need these kinds of people as leaders, and you get 8 qualities here in just 2 pages in this whole gigantic work. And it just blew my mind that he had sort of listed out all these things that we are still talking about today. I guess it shouldn't surprise me. I mean, it's philosophy, it's studying wisdom doesn't really change. So this is good stuff.
It is. Well, and we've reached this point in the book, so what does the book have to say?
Right. So we talked about, early on about being good and solid. You had to be this dependable, courageous person. We talked about, being sharp and quick at learning. And that sort of spilled out into the last 2 episodes. We talked about good memories and tenacious. You had to have a good memory. You had to be tenacious. Well, there's a third leg to that stool. And let me read you the paragraph to sort of give the flavor here. We should also look for people who have good memories, are tenacious, and enjoy all kinds of work. Otherwise, there's no way that they'll be prepared to complete such a long course of intellectual study over and above all the hard work of the physical program. So there it is, enjoying all kinds of work, because if you don't, you'll have no way of being prepared to complete the intellectual study that's going to be over and above the physical program that you're going to be required to complete to be one of these leaders, and to go on using as you lead, I would assume. So there's the list, and I know we had talked about this a little bit. You immediately latched on to the fact that there was a physical program here.
Well, yeah. So I thought it was interesting that, because we're always thinking of the leadership and the mental strength and character and things like that, but that he mentions the physical part, and my brain immediately went to the science that we now know, right? And it's obviously they had figured out without the MRIs that in order for your brain to function at its best, physical labor, physical activity has to be involved.
Yeah.
If you want increased blood flow, you want the right chemical balance in your brain, then being physically active is one of the keys. And so, you see this, it seems like every CEO, when they talk about their daily regimen, it always starts with some sort of 2-mile run, hitting the gym, some sort of physical activity that allows them to then go do the mental work of leadership. And I find that fascinating that even back then, right? Because I'm picturing a bunch of guys in togas sitting around, making decrees about leadership.
Right.
But the realization that in order to lead for the long term, you have to have the physical stamina in order to do that. And I found that very fascinating.
Yeah, and looking at the Iliad and the Odyssey, that obviously they had a lot of slaves. That was part of their culture. You conquer somebody in war and you carry off their women and children as slaves and so on and so forth. So they had people to do the physical work, and yet they were doing physical work. Now there was work that you did that was, the work to, what you have to do to put food on the table. And there might've been some play, but this third element was scholé, where you sit down and have these discussions like they're having in the Republic. You're talking about weighty things and trying to figure out what's really true. Well, but that's not what you do all the time, right? And as you point out, we've all had the experience of, having a roadblock and saying, you know what, I'm going to take a break. I need to go and just pick it, right? I'm going to go mow the lawn. I'm going to go, chop firewood. There's a million things that are just sort of these repetitive physical tasks that put your brain in a different place. And then boom, suddenly you get the insight and you're past that block at work. And it doesn't happen until after, or sometimes even during the physical work that you're doing.
Oh yeah, you see that all the time. I'm a firm believer that if it wasn't for the riding mower, we would never evolve. I think that's when I get, it's a task. It's somewhat physical, but yet right. My brain is working on solving the problems of the day.
Well, Mike, it's one of the few places where you're allowed to think.
Yeah,
right? I mean, everywhere else you should be doing stuff. If you're at work, you should be doing. You're not allowed to think. My father-in-law has often told me about, he worked for a very large international manufacturing firm. He was at the one plant that never got shipped overseas. It was the American plant that was so good they never got shipped overseas. And he had a boss at one point who said, look, here's what I want you to do. And you need to do it for at least 2 hours every day. Put your feet on that desk, look out that window, drink your coffee, and I need you to think about some of the problems we have around here. But think about that. He had to get permission from his boss for that to be okay. And people still came in and said, what are you doing? Right. So there's an element here of the fact that the physical and the mental are very much connected. I guess I'll just stop there and say that. No, but you pointed out there's another benefit.
Well, yeah, when I thought of it, the second thing I thought about was the great examples that I've had in my life and that I've seen in my coaching and that you've read about in history, where the leader, when it comes down to crunch time, they jump in and physically lend a hand. Yeah. And so the FedEx distribution center is backed up, take off your suit coat, get down there and start heaving boxes. And if the ditch is starting to collapse, somebody gets down there, grab a shovel, get down there, start shoveling. I had a great example in one of my automotive stores. The sales manager, they were low on inventory. A bunch of cars came in. The cleanup department was overwhelmed, so he came in on his day off and washed cars all day.
Yep.
And the message that sends from a leadership standpoint, that no job is above or beneath anyone in the organization, and that we all should do whatever it takes to make the organization successful.
Yeah. And there, to go back to the quote from the Republic, there's some joy in that work, right? There, you are to enjoy all kinds of work. That's literally the quote. So there's some joy in that physical labor to get it done, to be a part of the big machine of what you're trying to accomplish, and being all in on big things and little things, because they're all required. They're all a part of it happening. And the humility to do that is much easier when you really enjoy what it is that you're collectively doing.
Well, and this goes to one of my theories about modern work, which is that so much of our work, there's no visual recognition, there's no visual reward that it has been done. Yeah. And I firmly believe this is why, when you go into any accountant or auditor's office, there's an 18-foot long roll of tape hanging out of their adding machine. And so they want people to walk in and go, my,
ooh,
whoa, you have crunched some numbers. Whatever we're paying you, it's worth the money. So there's so much work we do now that at the end of the day, your computer, you've worked all day on your computer and you've emailed and texted and all that, and literally visually nothing has changed.
Yeah. So that's a great segue into the other side of this coin, the intellectual study. And we've talked about this the last couple weeks, that all the old saws about all leaders are readers, and just the different things that leadership has to do to continue to grow. And obviously that hip socket, my business, we talk about wrestle and grow, right? And so physical and intellectual both here are growth opportunities. Well, if you're going to enjoy it, there has to be some significance to it. So you pointed out, you don't even see a result of your work in the modern era. Well, we've talked about this, I think, before, but Sisyphus, there's a famous story from Greek mythology about a man, a king who's doomed in the underworld to roll a boulder up a hill. And he gets almost to the top, and then it rolls back down. And then he has to start back at the bottom and roll it up the hill again. And it's all this hard work and exertion, and then it rolls back down. And then he does it again, and then he does it again, and then he does it again. And for eternity, he is doing a job that has no purpose. And in fact, you never actually ever see the payoff either. And how many of us have got ourselves in situations, whether it's, we could talk about factory work and, assembly line work and repetitive motion. We have repetitive motion injuries nowadays, right? So this is like a real thing. But it's just as real for those of you that are primarily, quote unquote, working with mental labor or emotional labor. Another day, another customer, another situation. Here I am again. And what does any of this amount to? What does it even mean? Is there any value here? So this is a real thing that you have brought up that I think Plato would completely identify with.
Well, when you think about, people redefining their jobs in terms of the why, to bring that joy, that, you see, I have a receptionist, and she's changed her title to the president of smiles. And it's her job when somebody walks in to get them to smile.
Yeah.
And so what looked like kind of a mundane task is now an actual leadership role in the organization as the face of that organization.
You talk about key.
Yeah. And we always kind of discount those positions, but those are the positions that interact most frequently with our customers.
Yeah.
So finding purpose in that, I think we've talked about, I had a detail manager, and he, hired all these young people to clean cars, and he didn't see it as that. What he saw was he was developing young people to better themselves in whatever career came next.
Yeah.
And so his job was to finish polishing whatever their parents, whatever society, whatever schooling had failed to teach them. It was his job. He took it upon himself to bring them up to speed with some of these things, so that if they stayed here, they'd be a better employee. And if they went out into the world, they would be more successful. And so that purpose motive beyond, we wash a bunch of cars every day, to I'm teaching life skills to young people that could benefit them for the next 80 years. That gives meaning and purpose and gets you up out of the bed in the morning.
Yeah. And I'm sort of picturing these shells that get bigger and bigger as you go out. There's the task that you're doing. What are you doing? I'm washing a car. Why? So the car will be clean. Okay. Why are you doing that? Well, the car's got to be clean because this customer's going to be taken care of then. And why are you doing that? Well, it's because our department, our organization is going to thrive when we keep taking care of these customers. Why do you care about any of this? Well, to be honest, it's the people, right? There's some people element here. The other thing I was going to bring up, Mike, is, and I probably have mentioned this before, but the man who basically founded the Western monastic tradition, Saint Benedict. Benedict had these, he actually did it the wrong way first. He had a sort of a failed attempt at a monastery, and then he sort of figured out a system that worked. And as I recall, they sort of divided. It was like a cell that would divide once they got to a certain number of people, and they'd go and form a different community. And so he kept it at a certain number. He had all these rules. In fact, that's what it was called, the Rule of Benedict, a very short sort of, treatise on here's how you should run a monastery. And one of the big rules is ora et labora, which means pray and work. And it's always been special to me because, and I don't know any monks in my family. We're not even Catholic. But the Ramsays, Clan Ramsay, when they started in the Middle Ages as a lowland clan in Scotland, that was the motto. And so you can sort of see that the thread of that as I go through my family's heritage. I have a great uncle who was dean of labor for a college that's a work study college where everybody on campus works in lieu of tuition. Wow. I have a father who is just ate up with his work, loves what he does, has passed on his love of working to all four of his sons. And I could just go back through the chain. I have a family member who was involved in the labor movement with starting the union, organizing the union in the 1930s at Bethlehem Steel in Pennsylvania. I could keep going. But you see what's happening there is there's kind of two things going on. One is, gosh, I'm part of something bigger because of this heritage that I come from. It doesn't have to be from your biological heritage. It could be from your work heritage, right? Your mentor's heritage. That's bigger than you. That gives meaning to your work. And then there's a layer above that. Like, why are you doing any of this? The ultimate why, what's the good of all of this? And my guess is that there'll be some God connection to that ultimately. The one of the catechisms says that the purpose of man is to glorify God and enjoy him forever. There's that enjoy word again, right? Like I'm going to enjoy this, even when it's like not something that I necessarily enjoy doing in the moment, but there's something ultimate about this that makes it a joy to suffer through, if you will. I think that's a bigger deal than the average department, the average employer gives credit. And if they'd slow down and give their people some space to think about that, and if the employees would slow down and give themselves some space to go, why am I doing this? It wouldn't cause a bunch of people to quit and say, I'm going to go join a monastery. What it would do is it would cause a bunch of people to say, you know what, here's what turns me on about this. So that was a little preachy and long-winded, but I think this is a really, really big deal, and we don't slow down enough to think it through so that we are more fulfilled in our work.
No, I think you're right. Yeah, I think you get caught up in the whirlwind, as we call it, and the day-to-day and the deadlines and the tasks, and ultimately, you don't stop to think about, okay, what is the end goal here? What is the ultimate reward for this job?
Right.
And it's only in those thoughts that you find the motivation to keep doing it. And so that's where it all comes from. So, I mean, some huge takeaways from this very simple and short passage.
Right.
It's like, oh man, this is pretty deep. So the physical labor it must accompany the mental labor of leadership. And so it's very difficult to lead if you don't have the physical stamina and your brain is not sufficiently supplied with all of the materials it needs to have the great leadership thoughts and to convey those thoughts. As well as finding the purpose supplies motivation as well. So two different things to look at here, but you can't, as Plato so eloquently says, you can't have one without the other.
Yeah, great way to say it. Great summary. So we've got one more of these next week, and I don't want to spoil it, but I'm just going to go ahead and tell you that we're going to make sure you're not a bastard.
Oh yeah.
Is that clickbaity enough for you, Mike?
Yes. I think that no bastards. That's our new motto for the next episode. Well, that should confuse everybody. So tune in for more clarity next week. So and if this is 2 years from now, I'd just go ahead and let the thing play and the next one will start.
Right.
I love the technology. Yeah. All right, let's see what our announcer has to say.
And there you have it, another session of contemporaneous extemporizing from Mark and Mike. I know it's redundant, but consider who we're talking about. As always, feel free to share the ideas you heard here. No rights are reserved, no permissions needed. Thanks. See you next time on It Doesn't Take a Genius.
That's good enough.